The note was folded into a paper crown, left on the radiator beneath the east gallery window. Crayon uneven letters. She won't let me leave. I stood where I was not scheduled to stand and felt the system hesitate around me. The corridor camera failed to pan. The child's shoes were missing from the rack. I did not call it in. I did not move. I waited 1 second too long. The paper crown was not meant to be noticed. It sat low on the radiator ledge beneath the east gallery window, half hidden by the curtain's edge, its points crushed as if handled too often. The guard saw it because it was wrong, because nothing decorative was ever left in a transit corridor, and certainly nothing made of paper. He stopped mid-step. The click of his boot echoed once, then died. The corridor lights hummed at their regulated pitch. No alarms, no raised voices. The palace continued its measured breathing. He did not touch the object at first. He stood over it, scanning reflexively. Cameras, ceiling corners, the long sightline to the stairwell. Everything appeared compliant. That, too, was wrong. Objects did not appear in this building without paperwork or purpose. He crouched only after confirming the nearest camera was fixed in its idle sweep. The crown was folded from a single sheet, edges softened by heat. A child's work. Crayon lines bled through the paper, uneven and hurried. Inside, written along the inner curve, were 6 words. She won't let me leave. The guard did not read them twice. He closed the paper carefully, reforming the crown as he had found it, and set it back in place. His pulse stayed even. His breathing did not change. Years of training kept his face neutral, his posture relaxed. Procedure was immediate and clear. Any discovered item linked to a protected minor required reporting through command, withdrawal from the scene, and isolation of the area. The guard knew the language by memory. He did not activate his radio. Instead, he looked down the corridor toward the private rooms, the child's route, the place where movements were usually noisy with staff signals and quiet coordination. At this hour, there should have been a soft traffic of aides, a guard posted at the turn. There was no one. He checked his watch. The child should have completed her lesson transition 12 minutes earlier. That margin was acceptable. Delays happened. Tutors overran. Children resisted schedules in small, harmless ways. But the shoes. The rack outside the reading room held 3 pairs of indoor shoes, aligned and tagged. One space was empty, the child's space. The guard straightened and resumed walking, his pace unremarkable. He did not look back at the paper crown. He logged the object mentally, not formally. A choice. Small, quiet. At the reading room threshold, he paused. The door was closed. It was usually ajar. He listened. Nothing. No movement, no voice. The room sensor should have triggered on his proximity. It did not. He raised his hand and knocked once, soft, professional. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked, not electronically, manually. That required intent. His radio crackled, breaking the silence. A routine status check from command, impersonal and calm. He answered with the expected confirmation, his voice steady. He did not mention the object. He did not mention the lock. As he turned away, something scraped faintly behind the wall. Not a call, not a knock, just movement abruptly stilled. The guard stopped again. This time he did activate his body cam, not to record but to timestamp. He marked the corridor location. He requested a system check on room occupancy, phrasing it as a technical query. The response came back clean. The child was logged as present, stationary, supervised. Supervised by whom was not listed. He stood there between instruction and instinct, aware that every second of hesitation was itself a decision. Somewhere in the palace, authority had already moved. Quietly, correctly on paper. He looked once more toward the radiator at the far end of the corridor, where the paper crown sat untouched, waiting to be ignored. He took a step toward the secured wing instead. The access corridor narrowed as he approached the secured wing. The lighting shifted subtly, cooler, more clinical. He felt it on his skin before he registered it consciously. This area was designed to discourage lingering. No windows, no soft edges. He slowed his pace to match protocol, even as his attention sharpened. The service gate ahead was closed. That, too, was irregular. It was kept open during occupied hours for staff circulation, locked only during night security rotations or special containment directives. There was no advisory posted, no indicator light. He checked the gate panel. No fault code, no override prompt. The system was active and deliberately restricted. "Control," he said into the radio, measured and neutral. "Confirming temporary closure of East Service access. I'm not showing a notice." A pause, not long enough to be technical, long enough to be deliberate. "Stand by," came the reply. He waited, eyes forward, posture relaxed. A passing guard might have mistaken him for idle. He could feel the cameras adjusting now, their automated sweep correcting for his stationary presence. He shifted half a step to remain just outside the marked zone. "East Service access is restricted under household authority," Control said. "You are not required in that area. Resume assigned route." Household authority, not command. The distinction mattered. "Copy," he replied. He did not move. The radio clicked off. Silence returned, heavier than before. The corridor seemed to narrow further, the air stale and faintly warm. He was aware of the sound of his own breathing again, a detail he usually filtered out. He glanced at the wall clock. The child's schedule had now exceeded its buffer. That, combined with a manual lock and an unscheduled restriction, crossed a threshold. Not enough for alarm, enough for responsibility. He approached the gate and placed his gloved hand against the metal. Cool, solid, recently handled. The surface bore a faint smear where someone had pressed harder than necessary. "Miss," he said quietly, not into the radio, not loudly enough to be heard beyond the gate. It was not a call. It was a test. No response. He crouched, bringing his eye level down to the ventilation slot near the base. The space beyond was dim. He could see the outline of furniture legs. A chair tipped slightly. That was wrong. Furniture in these rooms was fixed or weighted. There was a sound then. A breath, shallow and controlled, as if someone were trying very hard not to be heard. The guard straightened slowly. His hand remained on the gate. He knew the next steps. Escalation through command would initiate review, consultation, delay. Delay was neutral on paper. Delay was not neutral here. He keyed his radio again, keeping his voice even. Requesting visual confirmation on supervised minor in East Wing. System shows present but unresponsive. Another pause, longer this time. "Supervision is in place," came the reply. A different voice. "Senior, you are instructed to disengage." The wording was precise. Instruction, not guidance. He acknowledged without argument, understood. He disengaged his radio. He did not disengage his position. The rulebook allowed immediate action when a protected minor's safety could not be reasonably verified. The definition of reasonably was intentionally vague. It relied on judgment, on accountability. He removed his glove and placed his bare hand on the manual release housing. The seal was intact. Breaking it would be recorded. There would be no ambiguity. He hesitated for less than a second. Then he applied pressure. The seal snapped with a dull crack, louder than he expected. The sound echoed down the corridor, abrupt and irreversible. He felt it settle in his chest, not as fear but as weight. Behind the gate, movement stopped completely. He pulled the release and felt the lock disengage. The gate shifted inward by a fraction, enough to let a line of light spill through. He did not open it yet. He listened. A small sound came from inside. Not words, not crying, just the unmistakable presence of someone trying very hard to remain still. He took a breath and pushed the gate open. The room beyond was occupied, and he was already too late to pretend this was a misunderstanding. The room was smaller than the system schematic suggested. Low ceiling, one narrow window set too high for a child to see out of without standing on something. The chair he had glimpsed earlier lay on its side near the wall, one leg resting against the skirting as if it had been pushed away rather than knocked over. The child sat on the floor, knees drawn in, back straight in the way children adopted when they were trying to look composed for adults. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. No restraints, no visible injury. That, too, could be misleading. She looked up at him but did not speak. He stepped inside and let the gate close behind him without engaging the lock. His body automatically positioned itself between her and the door, not defensively, practically. He lowered himself to one knee, keeping distance, keeping his voice level. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head once, small movement, controlled. "Can you stand?" Another shake, this time slower. He noted the details quickly. Shoes missing, cardigan buttoned incorrectly. The room temperature was higher than regulation. He felt the heat on his face now, faint but persistent, enough to cause discomfort over time. "Who brought you here?" he asked. She hesitated. Her eyes moved past him toward the door, not fear, calculation. She had learned when silence mattered. Before she could answer, the door behind him opened. The woman entered without haste, as if responding to a scheduled meeting rather than an intrusion. She wore no uniform, only a tailored jacket with a discreet household pin. Her expression was composed, almost curious. "You are not authorized to be here," she said. Her tone was calm, correct. She did not raise her voice. She did not look at the child. "I am confirming welfare," the guard replied. He did not turn fully toward her. He kept the child in his peripheral vision. "This room is not listed as an occupied space." "It is listed," the woman said, "under restricted access." "Restricted from whom?" "From you." That was the first shift, not procedural, personal. The guard stood, slowly. He did not square his shoulders. He did not step aside. The space between him and the child remained closed. "The child's access tag is inactive," he said. "That is not standard supervision." The woman smiled faintly, not unkindly. It was deactivated to prevent unscheduled movement. "Movement to where?" "Anywhere," she replied. "Children wander." The guard looked down briefly at the child. Her hands had tightened further, knuckles pale. She did not look at the woman. "Reactivation is required," he said, "immediately." "That will not be happening," the woman replied. "This is a temporary measure." "Temporary measures require notification," he said, "and oversight. This one does not." The silence that followed was deliberate. The woman allowed it to settle, confident in it. The guard felt the cameras adjust again, their quiet mechanical awareness returning now that authority had re-entered the space. His radio vibrated at his hip. He did not answer it. "Step aside," the woman said. "You are escalating a situation that does not concern you." "It concerns me," he replied. "The child wrote a note." That finally drew her gaze, sharp, assessing. "A note," she repeated. He did not elaborate. He did not show it. He did not need to. The shift in her posture was enough. A recalculation. "That was inappropriate," she said after a moment, "and irrelevant." He held her gaze. It was neither. Another voice came from the corridor now. Male, senior, approaching without urgency. Backup not for him but for her. The guard knew what was coming next. Formal instruction, witnesses, a narrowing window. He bent slightly and addressed the child again, quietly. "Can you walk if I help you?" She looked up at him. For the first time, her composure cracked, not into tears but into something more dangerous. She nodded. The footsteps outside stopped at the door. "Officer," the male voice said, measured and authoritative. "Step away from the minor." The guard did not move. The guard felt the shift before anyone spoke again. Authority had arrived in full, and with it, expectation. The man at the door did not enter. He did not need to. His presence alone altered the balance of the room. "Step aside," the man repeated, voice calm, rehearsed. "You are exceeding your remit." The guard kept his stance unchanged. His hands remained visible. His body still blocked the child's line of sight to the adults behind him. He answered without volume, without challenge. "I am exercising safeguarding discretion." "There is no safeguarding breach," the man said. "The child is supervised." "Supervision requires transparency." The woman shifted her weight, a subtle signal. The man acknowledged it with the smallest nod. "You have made your point," he said. "Now disengage." The guard reached down slowly, offering his hand to the child without looking back. She hesitated, then took it. Her grip was firm, too firm for comfort. That contact changed the room. The woman's expression hardened, not angry, not alarmed, but controlled irritation. "You are instructing her to defy an adult directive." "I am instructing her to stand," the guard replied. The child rose carefully, unsteady at first. She leaned toward him instinctively, her shoulder brushing his leg. He adjusted his stance to support her without drawing attention to it. The man at the door exhaled. "This is unnecessary." "So is the lock," the guard said. Silence followed, heavy, calculated. "Officer," the man said finally, "you will release the child and exit the room. This matter will be reviewed." The guard looked at the child. Her eyes were fixed on the floor now, jaw clenched. She had stopped shaking, but the tension had moved inward. He recognized it. The moment children decided endurance was safer than resistance. He made his decision. "Miss," he said quietly, "we're going for a walk." The woman stepped forward sharply. "You will not." The guard turned then, just enough to face them both. Not aggressively, precisely. His voice remained level. "I am invoking immediate removal under uncertainty of welfare," he said. "You may file objection after." "You don't have that authority," the woman replied. "I do," he said, "and you know it." That was the second recalculation, the one that mattered. The man at the door glanced toward the corridor cameras, then back. "This will not end well for you." "It's not meant to," the guard replied. He guided the child toward T. He exited, slow enough not to startle her, firm enough not to allow interruption. The woman did not touch them. She did not raise her voice. She stepped aside with visible restraint. As they crossed the threshold, the guard felt the weight settle fully. The line had been crossed. There would be no quiet correction, no internal adjustment. The corridor outside felt colder, wider, exposed. The guard keyed his radio as they moved. Protected minor in transit, welfare status unverified, requesting command-level presence. The response did not come immediately. The child looked up at him as they walked. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "No," he said without hesitation. She nodded, accepting the answer as fact. Behind them the door closed. And somewhere in the palace systems, a record began forming, one that would not be erased, only interpreted. The guard kept walking, fully aware that every step forward narrowed the space behind him. The corridor beyond the secured room was not part of any child movement plan. The guard knew that immediately. The lighting was harsher, the acoustics flatter. Sound traveled too cleanly here, every footstep exposed. He adjusted his pace, shortening his stride to match the child's, keeping his body slightly angled to shield her from open sightlines. Her hand remained in his. He did not tighten his grip. He did not release it either. "Keep walking," he said quietly, not as instruction but reassurance. "You're doing fine." She nodded without looking up. Halfway down the corridor, the first system resistance appeared. The motion sensors ahead failed to trigger. Lights remained at low idle, leaving sections of the passage dimmer than regulation. That meant manual override. Someone had intervened. His radio vibrated again. This time he answered. "Command," he said. A different voice responded, lower, cautious. "Hold your position." "I'm moving," the guard replied, child in hand. A pause, the kind that involved multiple listeners. "You were instructed to disengage," the voice said. "Where are you taking her?" "Out of restricted access," he replied, "to neutral space." "That route is closed." The guard slowed but did not stop. He could see the junction ahead, the branching point where public circulation began. If he reached it, visibility would change. Witnesses would exist. That mattered. "On whose authority?" he asked. "Household." Not command again. Deliberate. He felt the child's grip tighten. She had heard the change in his voice. Children always did. "It's okay," he said to her, softer now. "Just a few more steps." The junction lights flickered, then stabilized. Too late. Someone had noticed. Two guards appeared ahead, stepping into the corridor from opposite sides. They did not rush. They did not draw attention. Their posture was neutral, but their placement was precise, blocking without appearing to. Colleagues trained, familiar faces. The guard stopped, not abruptly. He positioned himself slightly in front of the child, still holding her hand behind him. His shoulders remained relaxed. "This area is closed," one of them said. "I'm aware," the guard replied. "I'm exiting it." "You need to return the child." "To whom?" The other guard hesitated, just long enough. The answer came from behind instead. "Officer." The woman's voice again, calm, controlled. She had followed without hurry, confident he would not outrun the system. "This is becoming inappropriate," she said. "You are placing the child under stress." The guard did not turn. He kept his eyes on the two guards ahead. "She asked to leave," he said. The woman smiled faintly. "Children say many things." The child shifted behind him, not forward, away. That movement decided it. He addressed the guards in front of him, voice steady. "I am invoking corridor priority for minor safeguarding. Stand aside." They did not move. Behind him, the woman spoke again, her tone firm now. "If you continue, this will be treated as misconduct." The word landed exactly where it was meant to. Career, record, future. The guard considered the distance to the junction. 8 steps, 10 with the child, too far if they resisted. He felt the system closing around them, procedural, quiet, polite. No raised voices, no visible force, just denial. The child tugged his hand once, small and urgent. "Please," she said. That was enough. He released his radio from his shoulder and let it drop, clattering against the floor. The sound echoed sharply, breaking the controlled calm. Every eye turned to it. And in that half-second of disruption, the guard shifted his weight forward. The guard moved before the moment could close. He stepped forward, guiding the child with him, not pulling, not rushing, just enough momentum to force a decision. One of the guards ahead reacted instinctively, stepping back half a pace to avoid contact. The other hesitated, caught between protocol and presence. That hesitation opened the corridor. "Move," the guard said quietly, not as a command, but as fact. They did. The junction lights brightened as they crossed the threshold into shared circulation. The air changed immediately, cooler, less controlled. Sound became messy again. Footsteps from distant halls. A murmur of voices somewhere above. "Witnesses." The woman stopped at the boundary, her expression tightening for the first time. She did not follow. Household authority weakened in public space. She knew it. So did he. The guard slowed once they were clear, allowing the child to adjust. Her breathing was shallow but steady. He guided her toward a bench along the wall and crouched beside her, keeping his body angled outward. "You can sit," he said. She did, folding her hands again. The familiar posture returned, but less rigid now. He activated his radio from the floor, lifting it calmly and reattaching it to his shoulder. "Command," he said. "We are in public circulation. Child removed from restricted area. Requesting welfare officer and senior command presence." The response came faster this time, tighter. "Stand by." He felt eyes on him now, not hostile, not supportive. Observant. Staff passing through slowed, then moved on, sensing something irregular without understanding it. The two guards who had blocked him remained at the junction. They did not approach. Their role had shifted from enforcement to observation, another quiet recalculation. The woman stood just inside the closed wing boundary, speaking into her own device now, her voice low. She did not look at the child again. Minutes passed, not long enough. A senior officer arrived first. Command uniform, neutral expression. He took in the scene without visible reaction. The child seated, the guard positioned protectively, the invisible line of authority drawn on the floor behind them. "What happened?" the officer asked. The guard answered with facts only. The note, the locked room, the deactivated tag, the refusal of access clarification. No accusations, no interpretation. The officer nodded once. "You broke a seal." "Yes." "That will be reviewed." "Yes." The child shifted on the bench, her feet not quite touching the floor. The officer noticed her then properly. He lowered his voice. "Miss, are you all right?" She looked at the guard before answering. He gave the smallest nod. "I think so," she said. Not yes, not no. That answer changed the tone again. A welfare officer arrived shortly after. Civilian. Calm. She knelt in front of the child and spoke softly, guiding her attention away from uniforms and corridors. The guard stepped back half a pace, maintaining line of sight but relinquishing direct contact. It felt like retreat, it was. The woman from household authority was gone now, replaced by absence. That absence would be explained later, carefully. The senior officer turned back to the guard. "You're relieved," he said, "for now." "For now," the guard echoed. As he walked away, leaving the child in safer hands, he felt the full consequence settle, not fear, not regret, but certainty. He had crossed from observation into record, from system into subject. Behind him, the palace resumed its measured rhythm. Ahead of him, the investigation waited. And somewhere in the closed wing, a door remained locked, no longer unseen. The holding office was deliberately plain. No insignia, no windows, a neutral temperature maintained by an unseen system that hummed just below awareness. The guard sat alone at the narrow table, cap placed precisely in front of him, gloves aligned beside it. He had not been told he was detained. He had not been told he was free to leave. That ambiguity was intentional. A faint sound traveled through the wall to his left. Not speech, movement, chairs shifting. The muted cadence of multiple voices staying carefully low. He recognized the pattern. Assessment, not interrogation. Yet. His radio had been taken for technical review. His body cam remained active, but he knew access would already be restricted. Nothing in this room existed without oversight. The door opened without warning. A senior command officer entered, followed by a civilian safeguarding supervisor. Neither sat immediately. They remained standing, setting the balance before a word was spoken. "You acted without clearance," the officer said calmly. "Yes." "You damaged secured property." "Yes." "You removed a protected minor from assigned supervision." "Yes." The rhythm was deliberate, establishing record, narrowing interpretation. The safeguarding supervisor finally spoke. "The child did not report physical harm." I didn't claim she had, the guard replied. Silence followed, not disapproval, interest. What made you act? The officer asked. The guard answered carefully. An unauthorized object, a locked space not logged, deactivated access, and the child's behavior. That is subjective. Yes. The officer leaned back slightly. You understand how this appears. I do. They exchanged a glance, not agreement, calibration. Another sound passed th. Rough the wall, this time clearer, a child's voice soft, indistinct. He felt his shoulders tighten despite himself. He forced them still. She's being spoken to now, the safeguarding supervisor said, noticing. In an appropriate setting. That setting did not exist earlier, the guard replied. The officer's expression hardened by a degree. Careful. The door opened again. A third figure entered. Household authority. Not the woman from before, but someone senior enough to replace her absence without comment. We are reviewing an internal misalignment, the newcomer said, voice smooth. Not a crisis. The guard met his eyes. A child was confined. She was managed. Without oversight. Without your oversight, the man corrected. That was the shift, the reframing. The guard felt pressure build, not loud, not aggressive. Administrative. The kind that rewrote events by narrowing language until intention disappeared. You overstepped, the officer said. That is undeniable. I stepped where the system failed, the guard replied. Another pause, longer, riskier. From the wall again a sound. This time a single word, clearer than before. No. It was quiet, firm. A child's voice refusing something small but unmistakable. The safeguarding supervisor turned her head toward the wall, just slightly. The household authority did not. The officer exhaled slowly. This is becoming complicated. The guard remained still. He did not react outwardly to the sound, but it grounded him. Proof that the earlier silence had not been emptiness. We will need a formal statement, the officer continued. Until then, you will remain here. For how long? The officer did not answer. The door closed again, sealing him back into controlled quiet. The hum of the ventilation seemed louder now. Through the wall, voices resumed, lower, firmer. The child's voice did not return. The guard stared at his gloves on the table, aware that whatever was happening next was already moving without him. And that the wall between them was not meant to protect sound, but to control who heard it. Time lost its shape in the holding office. The light above him did not dim or brighten. No clock, no vibration from passing footsteps. The palace could isolate without appearing to. When the door opened again, it was not the same configuration. Only the senior command officer entered this time. No safeguarding, no household authority. That absence carried its own meaning. You will give your statement now, the officer said. The guard nodded once. A recorder was placed on the table, activated, no preamble. State the moment you decided to override protocol. The guard did not rush, when the child's access tag was deactivated. And before that, when the room was manually locked. And before that, he paused just long enough to make the answer deliberate. When I read the note. The officer's eyes lifted. The note. Yes. Where is it? I secured it. Where? With my effects. That was not authorized. No. The officer leaned back. You understand that objects can be misinterpreted. Yes. Children dramatize. Yes. And staff sometimes manage behavior in ways that appear severe when isolated from context. Yes. The officer waited. The guard did not elaborate. He had learned long ago that silence forced others to choose their own words carefully. You are not accused of malice, the officer said finally, but you are exposed. The word was chosen precisely. Not wrong, not guilty. Exposed. The household position, the officer continued, is that the child required controlled separation due to escalating behavior. The guard said nothing. There is no formal record of confinement, the officer added. No documentation of restriction. The guard looked up, then the system failed twice. The officer held his gaze, or it functioned as intended. Another sound passed through the wall, not the child this time. Adult voices, tighter, more numerous. The investigation was widening, but not in a direction that favored clarity. You will be reassigned, the officer said, temporarily. To where? That will be decided. And the child? The officer did not answer immediately. When he did, his tone was neutral. She will remain under review. By the same authority. By appropriate authority. The guard nodded once. It was the only response available. The officer stood. You are not dismissed. Remain available. The door closed again. Minutes later, real minutes this time, marked by a subtle change in air pressure, the safeguarding supervisor returned alone. She did not sit. I can't discuss outcomes, she said quietly, but your presence mattered. The guard met her eyes. Is she safe? The supervisor hesitated. That hesitation was the answer. She is being listened to, the woman said. That is not nothing. The guard absorbed that without comment. When she left, the guard remained seated, hands folded now where his gloves had been. Somewhere beyond the wall, systems were adjusting, roles shifting, language being chosen, responsibility redistributed. He understood then that the greatest pressure had not passed. It had merely changed form. What had been immediate was now procedural. And procedures, once activated, rarely moved in the direction of truth without resistance. The door did not open again for a long time. But when it finally did, the guard knew before a word was spoken that he would not be returning to his post. Not yet. Not ever in the same way. The reassignment came without ceremony. A junior officer met him outside the holding office and handed him a sealed movement slip. No explanation. No eye contact. The corridor beyond was active again, staff moving with practiced neutrality, the palace returning to its visible rhythm as if nothing had occurred. The guard read the slip once. Temporary duty, interior perimeter, observation only. It was not a demotion. It was something quieter. He followed the route indicated, passing familiar junctions that now felt altered. Doors he once guarded were closed to him. Others opened automatically, guiding him into spaces designed to keep people present but uninvolved. The interior perimeter overlooked the east wing from a distance, not close enough to intervene, close enough to see movement. That too was intentional. He took his position behind a glass partition that reflected more than it revealed. From here, he could observe the flow of staff entering and exiting restricted areas. He could see the welfare officer pass. He could see command uniforms come and go. He could not hear anything. The radio at his shoulder was active again but filtered. He received updates stripped of detail, instructions without context. Maintain position. Do not engage. Report deviations only. He complied. An hour passed, perhaps two. Time blurred again, but differently now, less oppressive, more deceptive. The guard kept his posture relaxed, his attention sharp. He catalogued movements, counted entries, noted absences. The child did not appear. That absence pressed harder than any confrontation had. His radio vibrated. A private channel opened, command level. He answered immediately. You are to stand down from observation, the senior officer said. Return to ready room. The guard did not respond right away. From his position he could see the east wing service door open. Two figures emerged, one adult, one small. The child. She walked beside the adult without holding their hand. Her posture was upright, controlled, too controlled. She wore different shoes now, new ones untagged. Confirm, the voice on the radio repeated. I have visual on the child, the guard said. A pause sharp this time. That is no longer your concern. She's being moved, he said. Where? Stand down. The adult guiding the child adjusted their path, angling away from public circulation toward a service corridor. The same corridor he had been blocked from earlier. The closed wing's shadow. The guard felt the familiar tightening, the pattern repeating but refined, cleaner. No locks this time, no notes, just redirection. Request clarification on destination, he said. Denied. That word again, precise, final. He weighed the options quickly. If he moved now, it would be visible, unjustifiable. He had already expended his margin. Another step would not be quiet defiance. It would be open refusal. The child glanced sideways as she walked, her gaze drifting, not searching, just aware. Her eyes passed over the glass partition. For a fraction of a second, they met his. No expression, no signal, just recognition. The adult placed a guiding hand on her shoulder, not forceful, firm enough. Last instruction, the voice said in his ear, remain where you are. The guard stayed still. But his hand moved slowly, deliberately, to the radio's secondary switch, the one reserved for emergency override, the one that logged intent before action. He rested his thumb there. The corridor ahead swallowed the child from view. The system waited to see what he would do next. The guard did not press the switch. Not yet. He let his thumb rest there long enough to register intent, then lowered his hand. The system would record the hesitation as nothing. The moment itself was his alone. Copy, he said into the radio. His voice was level, obedient. The channel closed. From behind the glass, the corridor returned to its neutral state. Staff continued moving. No one appeared alarmed. Whatever had just happened was already being folded into routine. He remained at his post for another 20 minutes. No further instructions, no clarifications. The absence of communication was itself a directive to absorb, to normalize. When he was finally relieved, it was by an officer he did not recognize. The exchange was minimal. No questions, no commentary. The ready room assigned to him was smaller than his usual station. Windowless, functional, a place for waiting, not preparing. He sat CK straight, hands resting on his knees, and let the quiet settle. A knock came sooner than expected. The senior command officer entered alone. He closed the door behind him. You're testing limits, he said without accusation. Yes. You're also demonstrating restraint. Yes. The officer studied him for a moment. Do you know why the child was moved? No. She's been reassigned to alternate supervision, temporary. By the same authority. The officer did not answer directly. You forced visibility. That has consequences. For her. For everyone. The guard absorbed that. Visibility was not protection, it was exposure. Sometimes that helped, sometimes it hardened positions. You will remain on restricted duty, the officer continued. No direct contact with protected minors. For how long? That depends. On what? On whether this stabilizes. The word again, stabilize, not resolve, not correct. The guard nodded, understood. The officer hesitated at the door. You should know, he said, there was no authorization for the original confinement. The guard looked up sharply. It will be addressed, the officer added quickly, internally. Was the child informed? The officer paused. Children are not always informed of adult decisions. The guard said nothing. After the officer left, the guard remained seated. He did not rehearse arguments. He did not plan statements. He focused on facts because facts were the only things that persisted when narratives shifted. Later, much later, the welfare officer returned. She did not sit. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely. "She asked about you," she said. The guard did not respond immediately. "I told her you were doing your job," the woman continued. That seemed to satisfy her. "Is she still in restricted space?" "Yes." "Is she alone?" "No." The welfare officer met his eyes, "But she's quieter now." That was not reassurance, it was a warning. When the woman left, the guard stood and moved to the door. He did not open it. He placed his hand against the metal, feeling the vibration of the building beyond. Instruction conflict had narrowed his options. Compliance kept him present but powerless. Defiance would remove him entirely. The system had learned from him, and it was adapting. Somewhere beyond his reach, a child was learning the same lesson. And that knowledge sat heavier than any formal reprimand. The emergency override request appeared on his terminal without sound. No alert, no priority flag, just a line of text nested among routine system notices, easy to miss if you were not looking for it. Access tag status change pending. Subject minor East Wing. Request origin household. The guard leaned forward slightly. His posture remained casual to anyone watching through glass or camera. Inside, everything tightened. A status change pending meant the tag had already been flagged. Whatever they were about to do had not yet cleared command oversight. There was a narrow window, measured in minutes, sometimes seconds, before the system accepted it as settled fact. He checked the time stamp. The request had been logged 42 seconds ago. He keyed into the system using observation credentials only. Limited view. Enough to see movement, not purpose. The child's location marker pulsed once, then stabilized deep within the East Wing's internal corridor network. A space with no public crossover. A space that required a gate. He did not request clarification. He did not radio command. He had learned what delays produced. Instead, he stood and moved. The interior perimeter did not prevent physical relocation. It merely discouraged it. He followed a service route that kept him out of main circulation, his steps measured, unhurried. Anyone reviewing footage later would see compliance, not urgency. The closer he came to the East Wing, the quieter the building became. Not empty, controlled. Sound dampened by design. Lights steady, unreactive. The service gate stood ahead, exactly where it had before. Closed, active. The panel beside it glowed a neutral blue. No warning indicators. No posted restriction. A clean denial. He placed his hand near the panel without touching it. The system registered his presence but offered nothing in return. No prompt. No option. His radio vibrated. He ignored it. He tried the Emergency Child Safety Authority code, a narrow privilege, one that existed precisely for ambiguity. The panel processed for a moment longer than usual. Access DNID. No explanation, no log visible. That was new. He stepped back and scanned the gate housing. The manual lock assembly was intact, seal unbroken, no visible tampering. Whoever had initiated this had learned from last time. They were moving within the lines now. Behind the gate something shifted, not footsteps, furniture, a chair leg scraping softly across the floor. The guard did not speak. He leaned closer, lowering his head just enough to hear. The sound stopped. A pause followed, low. And G held, deliberate. Then a breath, small, controlled, familiar. His jaw tightened. He reached for his radio and switched to command priority. "Confirm child movement authorization through East Service," he said. The response came quickly, too quickly. "Movement approved," the voice said. "Stand clear." "By whom?" Household. The same answer, again. He glanced down at the seal on the manual lock. Intact, unbroken, the system had not yet forced his hand. But the pending status change remained on his terminal, ticking forward in silent increments. Once processed, the child's access would be permanently reassigned. Records would align. The room would become legitimate. He understood then that this was not about confinement anymore. It was about erasure. He placed both hands on the gate. The metal was cool, solid, designed to resist sudden force, not sustained pressure. He felt the weight of consequence settle fully this time, not abstract, not procedural, personal. If he broke the lock now, there would be no ambiguity left to argue. Behind the gate the breath came again, a little faster. The system waited. So did the child. The guard made his decision without looking at the terminal again. Numbers would only offer permission he did not need. He braced his shoulder against the gate, feet planted, weight aligned. Not a strike, a sustained push. The seal held for a moment longer than the last time, enough to remind him that the system had anticipated resistance. Then it failed. The crack was dull, internal, less dramatic than before. The blue indicator flickered once and died. The manual housing split at the seam, exposing the release beneath. He pulled. The gate opened inward by a controlled margin, the hinges resisting as if reluctant to be complicit. Light spilled through, cutting a hard line across the floor. The room beyond was different this time. Larger, fewer objects, designed for absence. The child stood near the far wall, facing away from the door, hands pressed flat against the surface as if she had been instructed not to turn. She froze when the light reached her. He did not speak her name. He closed the distance slowly, keeping his steps audible. "You can turn around," he said. She did. Her face was composed, but her eyes were rimmed red, not from crying but from restraint. She had been holding it in. "Did anyone tell you why you're here?" he asked. She shook her head. "Did anyone tell you how long?" Another shake. He positioned himself between her and the gate, blocking the view behind him. He lowered his voice. "We're leaving." The word registered. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, not relief, release. His radio came alive, sharp and immediate, voices overlapping now, no attempt at calm. "Stand down. Step away from the miner. You are in violation." He reached up and removed the radio, setting it carefully on the floor, not throwing it, placing it. The difference mattered. He offered his hand. She took it without hesitation. As they moved toward the gate, footsteps approached from the corridor beyond. Multiple, coordinated. The guard adjusted his pace. He did not rush. He needed witnesses. They reached the threshold just as two senior figures came into view. Command, household, together now, unified. "You will stop," one said. The guard did not stop. "You are compromising the child," the other said. "She was compromised already," he replied. They moved to block him. He shifted his stance, angling the child behind him, his body absorbing the confrontation without contact. "This ends now," Command said. "Yes," the guard agreed, "it does." He raised his voice, not in anger but in volume, enough to carry. "Safeguarding override invoked," he announced. "Manual confinement of a protected minor without authorization. Gate lock breached to prevent system erasure." Silence followed, not because they were stunned, but because the words had been chosen carefully, recorded, irreversible. People appeared at the far end of the corridor now. Staff, guards, witnesses drawn by raised voices and broken routine. The household authority stepped back. Just half a step, it was enough. Command's expression changed, not to anger but calculation. "Escort them," Command said finally, "public route." The guard did not relax until they were moving. The child's hand remained in his. Her grip was steady now. As they passed into open circulation, he felt the shift again, the system losing control in exchange for visibility. Behind them, the gate stood broken, its seal destroyed beyond repair. And with it, the illusion that this had ever been contained. The public corridor was louder than it had any right to be. Footsteps, low voices, the distant hum of maintenance carts, ordinary sounds, amplified by the knowledge that they were now being heard. The guard walked at a measured pace, the child beside him, her hand still in his. He did not hurry. Urgency would suggest instability. Calm suggested control. Two guards flanked them. At a respectful distance, escort not restraint, command had chosen visibility over force, for now. The child's steps faltered once as they passed a wide window. She glanced at the glass, at her own reflection, then back to the floor. He adjusted his pace without comment. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To a safer room," he said. It was the most accurate answer he could give. They reached a small reception space just off the main circulation path. Neutral furniture, soft lighting, a place designed for waiting without appearing to detain. The escort guards stopped at the threshold. "This is far enough," one said. The guard nodded and guided the child inside. He positioned her on the sofa, angled away from the door, then stood, not looming, not retreating, present. Within moments the room filled. Command first, then safeguarding, then household authority arriving separately, deliberately late. Each took in the scene without speaking, reading posture and placement before words. The child's shoulders stiffened. She drew her feet up onto the sofa, a protective reflex she tried to correct and failed. The guard noticed. He moved a half step closer, enough to be felt without touching. "She's been removed from restricted confinement," he said calmly, before anyone else could shape the narrative. "Again." Command's jaw tightened. "You forced entry into a controlled space." "Yes." "You broke a second seal." "Yes." Household authority spoke next, voice smooth, carefully pitched. "This is unnecessary escalation. The child was under observation." The guard turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the speaker without shifting his body away from the child. Observation requires consent and record. She was not harmed. She was isolated. That is not the same. It is to a child. The safeguarding officer raised a hand, small but decisive. "I need to speak with her," she said. The guard hesitated for the briefest moment, not refusal, assessment. The child looked up at him, not pleading, asking. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I'll be right here." The safeguarding officer knelt in front of the child, lowering herself to eye level. She spoke softly, her words indistinct, designed not to carry. The child answered in short phrases, her voice steady but thin. The guard listened without listening. He watched the room instead, the way household authority shifted position to keep command in sight, the way command avoided looking directly at the child, the way the door remained open. Open doors were choices. After several minutes, the safeguarding officer stood. "She's not injured," she said, "but she's distressed. She believed she was being punished indefinitely." "That was not the intent," household authority replied. "Intent is irrelevant," the safeguarding officer said. "Impact is." The room tightened, lines hardened. Command exhaled slowly. "This cannot continue," he said. "We need resolution." The guard felt the weight of that word settle. Resolution meant closure. Closure meant compromise. Household authority turned to him. "You've made your point," the woman said. "Now step aside, let us handle this." The guard did not move. The child's hand found his sleeve again, small, certain. Command's voice dropped. "Officer." The guard looked at him, calm, unyielding. "No," he said. The word landed cleanly, not loud, not defiant, final. And in that moment, Every option in the room narrowed to consequence. The refusal did not provoke an immediate response. That was how authority recalibrated, by pausing, by letting the weight of consequence hang long enough to make retreat feel like reason. Command looked at the safeguarding officer. "We need a private discussion." "She stays," the safeguarding officer said, indicating the child without looking at her. Household authority inhaled sharply. "That is inappropriate." "It's necessary," the safeguarding officer replied. "Any separation right now would reinforce the fear." The guard remained where he was, not defiant, anchored. Command turned back to him. "You understand what you're doing?" "Yes." "You're placing yourself outside protection." "Yes." The word had lost nothing through repetition. If anything, it had become sharper. Command nodded once, as if confirming a calculation only he could see. Then listened carefully. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The household position will not concede wrongdoing. If this proceeds formally, the child becomes evidence. That carries its own harm." The guard absorbed that. It was not a threat, it was worse. It was framed as care. The child shifted on the sofa, her fingers tightening in his sleeve again. She was listening now, even if she did not understand every word. "What's being proposed?" the guard asked. Command glanced briefly at the household authority, then back. "A transfer, immediate, new supervisory chain, no confinement, no restricted spaces. And accountability. Internal." The guard held his silence long enough to make it uncomfortable. "And the note?" he asked. Household authority stiffened. "What note?" "The one she wrote," the guard said evenly. "The one that started this." "That object was unauthorized," the woman said. "It should be returned to household custody." "No," the guard replied. Safeguarding turned sharply. "It stays with us." The word "us" landed deliberately. Household authority looked at Command. "This is spiraling." Command exhaled. "It's already spiraled." He turned back to the guard. "You will be removed from active duty, effective immediately." The guard nodded once. "I expected that." "You will submit your statement in full. You will not speak to press. You will not contact the child." "I haven't." "And you won't," Command said. "Not again." The child looked up at him then. "Are you leaving?" He knelt slightly so they were closer to eye level. He did not touch her this time. He did not need to. "I'm stepping back," he said. "Other people are stepping in." She considered that, then nodded once. She had learned quickly how power shifted. The safeguarding officer moved closer to her, placing a reassuring hand on the back of the sofa. "You're not alone," she said. The guard stood. Household authority watched him with a look that was not triumph, not anger, but something colder. Assessment complete. Command opened the door wider. "Escort." The guard adjusted his cap, straightened his uniform, and walked out without looking back. He did not need to. The room behind him was no longer his responsibility. The corridor swallowed him into routine again. Boots on polished stone, murmured exchanges, systems resetting. Behind him, a child remained in a room with open doors, new watchers, and a future already being rewritten. Ahead of him, consequence waited. And for the first time since this began, the pressure did not tighten. It settled. The report room was brighter than it needed to be. White walls, no shadows, a table polished to reflect faces back at themselves. The guard sat alone at one end, his cap placed squarely in front of him again, the familiar ritual grounding him. A recorder blinked red. He had been here before, many times in his career, but never like this. Not as a witness, not as an accessory, as the axis. The door opened and closed with controlled finality. Two figures entered, senior command and internal review. No household authority this time. That absence was intentional. The narrative was being consolidated. Begin when ready, command said. The guard did not begin at the beginning. He began at the first deviation. The object was discovered at 1406, he said. Paper, folded, child-authored. He described the note without interpreting it. The lock, the deactivated tag, the denied override, each fact delivered cleanly, stripped of emotion, timed precisely. When he reached the first gate breach, command interrupted. You were aware this constituted destruction of secured property. Yes. And you proceeded anyway. Yes. Why? The guard paused, not to hesitate, but to ensure accuracy. Because delay would have legitimized confinement retroactively. Silence followed, not disagreement, recognition. Internal review leaned forward slightly. You're alleging intent. No, the guard replied. I'm describing effect. He continued. The second movement, the pending status change. The second lock, the room designed for absence. When he finished, the recorder continued blinking. No one spoke. Finally, internal review asked, do you believe the child was in immediate danger? The guard answered carefully, I believe harm was already occurring. Command looked down at the table. That distinction will matter. Yes. Not always in your favor. Yes. The door opened again, briefly. A junior officer entered and placed a sealed envelope on the table, then left without a word. Command opened it, scanned the contents, and closed it again. The child has been reassigned permanently, he said. New supervisory chain, external oversight. The guard nodded once. He felt no relief. Relief implied completion. And the household authority, the guard asked. That will be handled. Handled, another word that absorbed responsibility without revealing it. Internal review stood. Your actions will be cited as non-compliant but contextually justified. A careful phrase, a narrow one. You will not return to child proximate duty, command added. Effective immediately. The guard accepted that without visible reaction. He had already crossed that line. You will be reassigned to structural security, command continued. Gates, systems, perimeters. The irony was not accidental. The meeting ended without ceremony. No handshake, no dismissal phrase. The guard rose, collected his cap, and left the room as he had entered it, upright, composed, recorded. Outside, the palace corridor felt unchanged. That was the final deception of systems like this. They absorbed disruption and presented continuity as virtue. As he he passed the East Wing Junction. The service gate was gone, replaced already. New metal, new seal, cleaner than before. No mark remained of what had been broken. But systems remembered in other ways. And somewhere beyond his sightline, a child walked freely again. Under new eyes, new rules, a new story about what had happened to her. The guard continued down the corridor, aware that his own story would be quieter, shorter, reduced to a footnote of procedural irregularity. He was prepared for that. What he was not prepared for was how heavy the silence felt once the work was done. He exited through a staff door not marked on public maps and stepped into the controlled air of the outer yard. Behind him, the palace stood unchanged. But one thing had been altered permanently. Someone had said no and been heard. The outer yard was empty at that hour. Stone walls held the cold without complaint. The guard paused just beyond the threshold, allowing the door to close behind him before moving again. He stood still for a moment longer than necessary, listening to the building settle back into itself. Structural security began the following morning. Gates, locks, access redundancies. He was issued new protocols, new maps, new responsibilities that kept him adjacent to power without ever touching it. It was not punishment, it was containment. He worked methodically, he always had. The East Wing gate was not his assignment. Someone else handled that. He knew because the access logs no longer crossed his terminal. That separation was deliberate. Systems avoided memory when they could. Days passed, then weeks. The incident receded in conversation. Not erased, compressed, reduced to a sequence of administrative references that no longer carried the sound of a child's breathing or the weight of a hand on a sleeve. One afternoon, during a routine inspection, he noticed a small change. The child movement protocols had been amended. Not dramatically. One added requirement: dual authorization for isolation, automatic safeguarding review triggered by access tag deactivation, quiet lines of text buried deep in the system architecture. They would not cite him. They would not cite the incident. But the changes existed. That evening, as he completed his final check, a welfare officer passed through the corridor. She did not stop. She did not acknowledge him openly. As she walked by, she said, without turning her head, "She's adjusting." The guard nodded once. No one else noticed. Later, alone in the locker room, he removed his gloves and found the folded paper crown tucked inside his locker door, exactly where he had placed it weeks earlier. The seal on the evidence bag was intact, the writing still uneven, still real. He did not open it again. He secured it inside a plain envelope and logged it for archival safeguarding records, where it would sit unseen unless someone went looking for the reason a rule existed. When his shift ended, he left through the same unmarked door as before. Outside, the city moved without awareness of the palace's internal corrections. He walked until the walls were no longer visible. There was no ceremony, no recognition, no return to normal. But somewhere within the system, a small resistance had been absorbed, not eliminated, not celebrated, just acknowledged enough to alter behavior. That was how change survived here. Quietly. And the guard, now assigned to gates and thresholds, understood that some lines were meant to be crossed only once. Not to win, but to ensure someone else would not have to cross them again.